Despite all the injuries, Nelson Agholor, Alshon Jeffrey, Dallas Goedert, the Eagles, well, they still have the Lion King. They still have Carson Wentz. And coming in to Lincoln Financial Field this Sunday, Detroit. So they're coming in, and I got to move this. Hold on. All right, there we go. Mike Skolsky is here. I am Adrian Fedke. Ugly start there, but we got it back on the rails there.
Yeah, I mean, it was similar to week one. We had that really rough first half. I mean,
I had a rough there first, 15 seconds.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's very tough when, you game plan all week to have, Goddard, Alshon, and Djax. Then mysteriously within 5 minutes before and after the game, all three of them are taken away from us. So that just dramatically changed the game for us. And I think that's a big reason why we started off slow. And I think, once we got into halftime, we were able to make some of those adjustments. Then I think that's why you saw that big jump in the second half.
Yeah, I want to get into that right away, and you already brought it up. So last week what happened, Sunday they got off to another slow start. And then not only did they get off to a slow start, it was coupled with injuries to Alshon Jeffrey, Dallas Goedert, and Nelson Agholor. And all of a sudden, you got to throw to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Matt Collins, who are not getting work with Carson Wentz during the spring, during the offseason, and during training camp. So you're going to have some timing issues with those guys. We saw in the first half. Second half, it got a little bit better. Eagles almost came all the way back. So that is a great point that you made. And Doug Peterson brought it up in the press conference on Monday. He's like, I had all these 12 personnel packages, and I'd start putting X's on my sheet because guys weren't playing. Goddard wasn't out. And, 12 personnel is a big part of their game plan, obviously, because they want to have Ertz and Goddard there on the field at the same time.
It's a little surprising since that was a big part of the game plan that we only dressed 2 tight ends for that specific reason. I know they have Alex Ellis now, who they like, and I know last game, they put out Vaitai, I believe, at tight end a few times. But I mean, that's pretty much signaling what you're going to do. He's not the threat that Goddard would be if he was there. So, yeah, I mean, it was a drastic change that they had to pretty much prepare for with about 5 minutes. So, I mean, it was a very tough thing to overcome. And like you said, we still probably should have won that game despite all of that going wrong.
I wonder what some of their game plan would have been with the 12 personnel, because if I remember, in some film rooms that Brendan and I have done, there's a lot of tight formations where they stack the receivers and they would run the ball to that side. And if you remember the first week against Atlanta, what did Dalvin Cook do? He ran all along the boundary. So I wonder if that was kind of part of the game plan with Goddard and Ertz, line them up on the same side of the field and really utilize the outside zones that way and really get the guys going on the edges. But they didn't attack the edges. They were going kind of north-south. So that's something I was wondering, because I'm like, Dalvin Cook ran all over the Falcons along the boundaries, and we basically didn't do it at all.
No, we did not. A lot of it too, both in the passing and run game. Isaac Seumalo probably had one of the worst games of his career. Our running backs. I mean, they barely had a chance. A lot of those runs, and some you see Miles Sanders, some of those rookie mistakes. You see where he's trying too hard to bounce outside for the home run instead of just going north and south. I would have liked to see us stick to it, but I mean, obviously they found their rhythm in the second half of the passing game. But I do agree that with the 12 personnel, they probably were, thinking of stacking aside and either running a counter, going the opposite way, or running to that power side. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this week, because I think this will be a week where they can utilize that. Hopefully Goddard will be ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what they do with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Matt Collins, and see how they utilize them into the game plan. It's not like the Eagles are out everybody. They still have Zach Ertz. They still have Nelson Agholor. This is why you have all that depth that you possess. So you look at a team like Green Bay. If they lose a guy like Davante Adams, they're really screwed. But if the Eagles lose a couple guys, they can at least still kind of manage it a little bit, because after Davante Adams, it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Geronimo Allison, and then just meh.
Yeah, and there's going to be a big difference from what we see this Sunday compared to what we saw last Sunday. There's a huge difference between having the game plan 5 minutes into the game or before the game with these guys first, having a full week of practice with Arcega-Whiteside and Matt Collins. So I think you'll see. I mean, it's not going to be Alshon and Djax, but I think it's be a vast improvement over last week. You could tell that Wentz and Arcega-Whiteside didn't have that chemistry yet, but I mean, they'll be working on it all week this week. So I think we'll see a big jump from him, especially. And I'll give Matt Collins credit because we kept him on not for his receiving ability, but for his special teams ability, and he was able to come through a few times. So I'm hoping with a full week of practice, we'll see both those guys step up into that role.
Yep. So we'll see if those guys step up, and then we'll see if they utilize the ground game a little bit more this week. So didn't work last week in Atlanta. They really didn't attack the edges like I was alluding to before. Detroit is 24th against the run right now through 2 games, so maybe that's something that you can exploit a little bit. Austin Eckler was doing his thing last week against them, and then they played the Cardinals in week 1, who don't even run the ball basically. So I think that's the matchup to attack. It's like all these weapons are out, but we forget sometimes that this offensive line can really gain some traction in the ground game, and I think that's kind of how you win this game. You just run the ball, and then you use the play action to go deep. You can maybe get Matt Collins on a deep ball or something. I don't know, but I think this is a game where they actually try to run the ball more. But Doug Peterson has to run the ball. He can't be stubborn with it. He has to actually stick with it.
I agree. We definitely need to get the run game established. Also, what you saw the Chargers have a lot of success with was getting Austin Eckler involved in the passing game. And with our receivers out, I think that's going to be something we can definitely utilize. We can definitely get creative with Sproles and Miles Sanders. I would love if we start bringing back, some of the Andy Reid concepts, how we use B. West and how the Carolina Panthers use McCaffrey. Kick them out to the slot. Just get those mismatches with the linebacker in the passing game. So I think we should be leaning heavily on our running backs, and hopefully at least one of them will step up.
Man, Skolsky just bringing the heat today. That's a great point with Sproles and Sanders, because that was something I haven't watched the Lions game back, but I did watch the red zone throughout the day through the 1 o'clock games, and that was something I noticed. Eckler was the swing passes and stuff and getting him out into the flats. So Miles Sanders, Darren Sproles, could be a big game for those guys. I love that point that you made right there. So, we'll see, man. This is going to be about Carson Wentz kind of rising to the occasion here, I believe. And, let's talk about him now. What are your thoughts of his play the first 2 games? And, last week he started slow again, but, again, it was like working out the chemistry with the wide receivers. And by the time the fourth quarter came around, I mean, that was one of those games where it was like he played like shit, but I was so encouraged by what I saw in the fourth quarter. I don't even care what I saw first 3.
Yeah, I mean, some people talk about the first half, the Washington game. Like our time of possession that first half was crap, and then once we actually had the ball, we saw what he could do essentially. You could tell there was a lack of chemistry, and because we had all the play design with having Deshaun and Alshon in mind. But he, for all the the bad turnovers he had, some of the shakiness we saw in the first half, I do think that hit affected him a little bit. You saw him put his team on his back in the second half. I mean, he was getting punished almost play after play, and he was coming through on third downs once again, like we saw in week 1, and he made some of the most incredible plays I've seen in his career, which is saying something because there's are some incredible plays.
That's why he's the Lion King.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp over too much, but he also had the game-winning throw, the perfect pass to Nelson Aguilar, and that should have been the signature win right there.
Oh my god, dude!
Yeah,
that play.
I figure we'll have a whole segment on it, but yeah,
we can talk about Nelson Aguilar a little bit now, because this is a game where he has to step up, and he normally isn't a guy who is adept at being an outside receiver, but I'm going to assume he's going to play outside in this game. So does this affect him moving forward? Because, I remember what happened in Seattle, and then it just snowballed. I hope that doesn't happen again here.
I mean, the sad thing about that drop, amongst the loss and the big moment, it was Aguilar actually had a very nice game outside of that.
He did.
Even afterwards, he made a very nice he made that clutch catch, I believe, on 4th down.
Yeah.
Which if there wasn't the offensive line held up and Carson was able to step in that throw, that would have been another touchdown. but he still had over 100 yards receiving. So I mean, it was still a nice game from him. It was just that one drop was like one of the worst drops I can remember in recent years. I mean,
it was bad. No, that was bad. Now I'll say this: I don't think he's that guy anymore. That was 2 years ago already. So it might have been 3 years ago already, actually. So that was a long time ago already in the whole scheme of things. And like after that, he went to go see like a sports psychologist and all that. So I think that's all behind him now. You know, it was an unfortunate drop. All the jokes were out on Monday about it. Well, you know, all the Butterfinger jokes, but got to put it in the past and move forward. So there is that. Okay, another thing I wanted to get into, and we'll first start with Jalen Ramsey. That's where we'll first start because the first 2 weeks here, the pass defense 31st in the NFL, and then I believe they're off to their second worst start in franchise history in terms of defending the pass. So is Jalen Ramsey somebody you're interested in? That's not the right question because I would say we're absolutely interested.
Absolutely, yeah.
But can the Eagles make it work?
I have my doubts. I mean, player-wise, no doubt. I mean, he's one of the best defensive players in the league. I have my doubts if Jacksonville actually intends to trade him unless they get some offer, like the Godfather offer, the offer they can't refuse. Do I think when we just signed Wentz that mega deal and where cap space is going to be tight over the years, do I think Howie's going to be ready to give up the boatload of picks I would take to get him? I'm not sure. He's also up for a contract extension soon, which he will deservedly be one of the highest paid defensive players in the NFL. So there's a lot of factors to think of this. I mean, I'm definitely considering it. I'm definitely giving the Jaguars a call. If I had to put money on whether or not Jalen Ramsey will be an Eagle, I would lean no right now. From what I think of Howie Roseman, he usually likes to go for those guys on the rookie contract, and usually a lot of the times a guy that we didn't even know was available. Like we got Jay Ajayi seemingly out of nowhere. I remember the year before we got Michael Bennett. I was like, the Seahawks were I didn't even know he was like on the table. So I think there's going to be a big trade. I do not think it's going to be for Jalen Ramsey though.
That's okay. All right. So that's actually a good segue into this. But I gave my thoughts on Jalen Ramsey yesterday in a video, and I basically echoed what you just said. So the top cornerback in the league right now is making just under $16 million a season. That is Darius Slay. So if you trade for him, which is going to be like, I don't know, a first, a third, and maybe a player or something, like something crazy. So it not only do you have to trade picks for him, you also have to pay him. And I broke down the numbers on the salary cap situation, but the Eagles just don't have money. And this is going to be something that's extremely difficult to try and get under the cap. I know Howie Roseman is the king of this, and he's the real Lion King and all this, but this one might be a little bit too much for him to chew on. So that's why we're going to segue into this question, because Brendan Albert hit us up on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this tweet from him, but he suggested another potential cornerback that could be on the trade market for the Birds, and that is Patrick Peterson. Would you be willing to go after him?
I haven't had a chance to really dive into his contract details, but
I got the contract details. Hold on.
All right,
let's do it. Contract details. So this year he's only making $8 million, and then next year I think it's 14. So next year it's a lot, but I think he's off the books after next year. So it would be something where you get him where I think he's 28, 29, and then he's off the books. I think that's what it is. I could be wrong, so I'm going to look at it right now. But if it is that, I think, that is more probably appealing to Howie Roseman because you don't have to give the big max contract extension to Patrick Peterson. You'd have him for 2 years, and then you kind of move on and figure things out from there. Yeah,
I mean, Patrick Peterson is someone that I feel like has always been linked to the Birds and trade rumors.
Yeah, this was something that was last year too, and he's also suspended for the first 6 weeks.
I was about to say suspended.
Yeah, so you would have to wait until I think this is something where like the Eagles are going to wait and see because the key to the cornerback play isn't the cornerbacks; it's the pressure up front, and that's something that people confuse all the time here in Philadelphia. So it's like last year when people are talking shit on Jalen Mills and this year it's Ronald Darby. These defensive ends haven't registered a sack yet. and this defensive line is not getting after the quarterback. And when the defensive line does not get after the quarterback, these corners are going to get burnt because the Jim Schwartz's scheme, if you don't get the pressure, you get eaten alive.
I don't want to get too off topic yet, but I'll segue into it. Just starting with Patrick Peterson. Like I said, he's been rumored to us for a while. Were supposed to get him during the Kevin Kolb trade, but since we weren't allowed to make, I believe it was we weren't allowed to make that trade because of the lockout yet. We got Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie instead.
Yeah.
We were originally going to get, I think it was the 5th or 6th overall pick. The pick that they ended up using Patrick Peterson, and Joe Banner went on record said if Peterson was there, he would have been our pick. So ever since then, I feel like almost every other year he's rumored to us. Like Fitzgerald's been in the past, and Brian Urlacher. Talent-wise, I mean, I wonder if we could get him for a discount because of the suspension. I mean, it's worth the phone call, that's for sure. Going back,
absolutely.
But like you said, is the biggest point. The great defensive line and getting pressure can cover up a lot in the secondary. And we just talked about injuries. Another big injury we had was Tim Jernigan. Thankfully not lost for the season, but we talked about last week, Malik Jackson going down, and I said, you know what, it sucks, but we have Tim Jernigan, so now it's not the end of the world. I think those were my exact words. And now I don't want to say it's the end of the world, but now it's even more of a concern because of that defensive line depth. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually went out and made a trade for an interior defensive lineman instead of someone in the secondary.
The reason why it hurts is you have 2 interior linemen who are pass rushers in Malik Jackson and Timmy Jernigan. And pass rushing right now is extremely important since the defensive ends aren't getting after the quarterback. So you have Akeem Spence and Hassan Ridgeway now. Akeem Spence more of a run defense player. And in the whole scheme of this, Fletcher Cox, I think, needs to play a little bit better too. So this entire defensive line, 0 sacks from the D ends, and then the D tackles kind of nagging by injury here. So by the way, going back to Patrick Peterson, because I have the details here now in the contract. So $8 million for 2019, and you're obviously not going to pay that since it's going to be 6 weeks in the season. And then for next year, it's 13.18, so $13.2 million cap hit for next year. That's a lot of money, but it's not that bad.
That's definitely manageable. That's something that they could handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's obviously someone the Eagles like. I would still think they're going to probably pull something out of left field. Maybe see who else the Dolphins have for available, or the Jets, or someone that's kind of going to be sellers around the way. I don't think we'll see a trade for another week or two. I think we're going to try to figure out what's going on or what we have. But I also think the Eagles, I thought Jim Schwartz obviously got burned on the one play, did a good job of kind of adjusting a scheme. We don't typically see him blitz. And I think he saw once he wasn't getting the pressure, that's when he started dialing with the blitz with mostly success up until that last play, which, I mean, I'll just give the Falcons credit. They identified it and they executed it perfectly. It was just a great recognition at the line by Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I thought our defense had a very good game, forcing 3 turnovers. Derek Barnett's kind of taking a page from Brandon Graham right now. He's getting a lot of the QB pressures, but not sacks. I feel like Brandon Graham's always hitting the QB, forcing turnovers. Making them throw it before they want to, but just not getting those sack numbers. So only a matter of time before those pressures. I think he's like second. He's like top 5 in QB pressures, if I remember correctly. It's only a matter of time before that starts, turning into actual sacks, which would be great to see.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like this is kind of the way it seems to be here during the Doug Peterson tenure. This first month is just kind of riggedy-raggedy. We're trying to figure things out, trying to get it going, and it can be ugly at times. And Philly tends to overreact here. I've seen it the last couple of years. And I saw it again last night on the Twitter and the YouTube, and all the people who think now the Eagles are going to go 1-3 and stuff. It's like crazy. I
think you said it last week. I mean, something about Eagles in week 2. I don't know what it is, but
yeah,
they're
always 1-3 now in Doug Peterson's tenure on week 2.
There's something weird about week 2, and like I can't put my finger on it. But I mean, the way I see it is that was still a game we should have won, despite almost everything that could have gone wrong going wrong.
Yeah,
we still, we're a drop away from winning that game.
See, it's like while everyone else was freaking out, I actually came away impressed by the fact that they were able to overcome all the injuries, be resilient. Carson Wentz, who's not clutch, was clutch,
Very clutch.
very clutch, as clutch as I've seen quarterback, this year. And I come away encouraged because I know the D line is going to get better. I know things are going to get better defensively. I know the offensive line is going to get better because this is the way it is the first 8 weeks with the O-line and pass protection. They for whatever reason, it's like this, and then they get it going. Run blocking is a little bit different. Run blocking always seems to kind of be there, but pass protection, no. Isaac Seumalo, no. He's deep. Oh, the holding penalties, and then he's getting pushed backwards by Grady Jarrett on every play. It was terrible.
I mean, Grady Jarrett is a great defensive tackle, but still, that you cannot get beat like that if you're a starting guard, and especially with what it's supposed to be the best offensive line in football. I mean, it was tough to watch. I think Pro Football Focus had like one of the lowest rated games ever for a guard. It was very tough to watch, and I mean, despite that, we almost overcame it. We didn't have any run game, and like I said, Carson Wentz put the team on his back. We didn't get the run game going. He was getting pressured almost every play. Obviously, he got that big hit to his chest, which, I mean, obviously, thankfully, wasn't a major injury, but was definitely bothering him. And despite all of that, he still put us in position to win the game.
Yeah. I mean, I came away impressed. So even though it was a loss, I predicted a loss. They went and lost. Now you bounce back and see what you can do against Detroit. And we finally get to talk about the Lions now, 20 minutes into the show, and we haven't even talked about the Lions yet. So this is where I'm a little bit concerned. Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay going against the secondary. So if you can't pressure Matthew Stafford, and their tackles are Taylor Decker and Ricky Wagner, and Decker didn't play last week, so I'm not sure if he's still injured or not, but you can get after those guys. And I believe they struggled in week 1 with Terrell Suggs and it was who's the other one? Chandler Jones. Last week they, for whatever reason, Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa did nothing. But this week we'll see if the Eagles can finally get some pressure on some tackles, because they've had the mismatch now for 2 weeks and they haven't done anything.
Yeah, they're not getting the number. Like I said, they're not getting the sacks, but they are getting at least 2 pressuring. They're getting the pressures, I should say, which isn't the same, but it's at least
it's important to get pressures because that makes the quarterback hurry his throw.
And our run defense has been stout both
yes.
weeks, which is encouraging because Kerryon Johnson is a talented young running back. Mm-hmm. We also need to worry about T.J. Hockenson. I mean, he didn't show as much week 2, but he showed week 1 what he's capable of. And other than that Vernon Davis play where, Centejo just completely blew, he's been doing pretty well against tight ends as well. Golladay, I'm not as worried about burning us deep, so I think our corners have the speed to stick with him. So, I mean, Matt, it's like everything on paper says we should win this game to me. I mean, like you said, their offensive line, it's not the greatest and they're banged up, so our defensive line, even with the injuries, should be getting pressure. So if we're even pressuring Stafford, I think we should be able to, win this game.
All right, so let me explain to you guys what happened with the Lions last week and how they won their football game. So they won 13-10, but they shouldn't have won the game. Chargers, I think they missed 2 field goals. They might have missed 3 field goals, actually. And then there was another drive where they had 2 touchdowns called back, and then Austin Eckler fumbled at the 1-yard line.
Yeah, and they also had
go ahead.
The last game, Rivers had the ball for a game-winning drive, and I just think he had no confidence in his kicker that he just kind of threw it up for grabs in the end zone. He didn't have to go for the win there, and he kind of threw it like they needed to get 7 because he just didn't trust his kicker at all. He's like, I need to try to win the game right now. He threw it directly to Darius Slay, but I mean they could have even played a conservative, gone to overtime. Who knows? Maybe the Lions have 2 ties right now. But that was kind of an ugly game. I mean, the Lions offense didn't get going at all. But to their credit, they also slowed down a pretty talented Chargers offense as well. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I feel like it's been a really weird 2 weeks of the NFL season. I mean, probably a lot's because a lot of teams have been very limited or sat their starters completely in preseasons. I feel like we're just seeing significant amounts of rust. We're seeing major injuries. I can't remember the amount of times this many QBs went down. And, it's kind of hard to get a grip on any team because even the top teams, the top teams, they haven't really played anyone yet either. So it's been a very weird year so far.
No, I agree. And that was a great point you made on Rivers because he threw that ball. I think there were about the 35-ish yard line, something like that, when he threw that ball. And they could have had a game-winning potential field goal, but he had no confidence in that kicker who had missed several attempts prior. And that's unfortunately a problem that the Chargers have had for several years now. So, So, all right. Moving on to their defense, I really like Darius Slay, one of the better cornerbacks in the league. So, we go back to this mismatch here with the wideouts going against the cornerbacks. And, I really think you nailed it, man, because Doug likes to play the mismatches. This game might be like the Broncos game where they put up all those points. And, people were talking about coming in, oh, man, how are they going to move the ball? Those corners are so good. The front seven is amazing. Well, what they did was they attacked the Broncos with their tight ends. And the Broncos defense against tight ends was bottom 5 in the league. I remember about this. I wrote about it for Philly Influencer. And this could be a situation where Skolsky talked about earlier, running backs in the flats, trying to utilize the screen game. And I think that's might be how they try to move the ball offensively with those guys and then with Zach Ertz. So I think that's how you win this football game. Running the ball, screen game, utilize your tight ends.
Yeah, and as soon as we get those guys going, that's what happens is the defense starts creeping up, and then that's when you throw that bomb to Mac Hollins, you throw that bomb to Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, we definitely have the talent. Even despite the injuries, we still have a lot of talent on offense, and we have a great quarterback to get them those balls. So, I mean, I think like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a lot relying on the running backs in the passing game this week. Getting the ball into their hands in open space. And we've seen teams already have success against the Lions this year with doing that. So I definitely think that's going to be a big part of the game plan. And I agree. I mean, and we know that Carson Wentz has no problem throwing the Zach Ertz. So I think, especially with those Alshon and Djax out, he's definitely going to be a big part of the game plan. And I like Nelson Aguilar redeeming it for himself. He's one of my fantasy pickups this week. I think we'll see a nice game from him. I think he's going to bounce back strong. And in the words of Dumb and Dumber, he's going to totally redeem himself.
There it is. All right, dude. I would love it because obviously make up for last week and get him some confidence moving forward. I think confidence is the key for him.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you said, I'm not too worried about, like the Seattle game a few years ago where it kind of just shook him up. Like I think he's a veteran now and he's able to shake that up. So I mean, he's able to look past that. So I think we'll find creative ways to use him. I still think he'll be primarily out of the slot. I'm hoping that Arcega-Whiteside gets involved a lot more. He just didn't seem to be on the same page, probably from not getting those practice reps with Wentz, probably from being on the second team offense. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think we still have a lot of talent despite the injuries. So there's no reason we can't get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually a question I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it already. Like, do you think Philadelphia is underestimating the talent the Eagles still have? Because you still have Nelson Aguilar, who's, he's not a number 1 wide receiver, but he could be a number 2 for a lot of teams. And then you still have Zach Ertz, who's essentially a 1,000-yard receiver. So he's not a wide receiver, but he's a receiver as a tight end who gets you over 1,000 yards, who did last year. So he's still a weapon. They still have some guys. Then you have the running backs, and, you can figure things out.
Yeah, especially if Goddard's there, I think, we're going to see, like you said, we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, and I think Goddard could have a big game if he's healthy. So I'm hoping we'll get one of those guys back. But even not, we still have 3 talented running backs. Even Jordan Howard showed he's actually a better pass catcher than I thought. So if we can get the running game going, or we can get the running backs involved, I think that's going to open a lot. Despite them not being Pro Bowl talents like Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey, they're definitely proficient, and they're all starting most of them are starting caliber wide receivers. So I do think they're being underestimated a little bit, and that I mean, that's kind of fair after last week's showing, but again, that's because they were kind of just thrown in and not really game planned for.
The Eagles are 7-point favorites at home with all the injuries against the Lions. Is that too much?
I mean, I trust Vegas, man. I mean, I guess you factor in the 3 points for being at home. And like I said, we match up well with them. Our defensive line should be able to get pressure. Our defense actually has played very well for the most part. I mean, we let off the gas a little bit against Washington, but I think that's because they were just kind of preventing the big play and they were letting the Redskins run out the clock on themselves. But I mean, for the most part, Falcons last week, most of their points came off turnovers, like one on the on the kickoff, which after the half, which that's when I thought, like, oh, here we go. It's gonna be one of those games where we get blown out. But thankfully, we stormed back. But our defense is looking pretty good, and our offense matches up pretty well. So I think 7 points. I wouldn't bet money on it, but I understand it.
Yeah, so now that I'm at the gambler, man, I'm like all about the point spreads and all this stuff, man. I'm all about it. So the over under is 46, and then the spread I think it's -7 for the Eagles. So Vegas is basically saying, if it's going to go over, it's going to be 27-20 Eagles, and that's actually a lot more points than I would think might be scored in this game. We'll see if the Eagles run the ball a lot and they throw it to the running backs. I think we'll have lesser possessions, and you'd have a lower scoring kind of game. So I guess this is where we can make predictions, and I'm feeling comfortable. I think the Eagles are going to be fine. I think people are kind of freaking out about nothing. Eagles are going to win 24-16. 24-13. They only scored 13.
All right, I'm going to go 27-17 Birds. I'm feeling pretty comfortable about it. I think they're going to put a heavy emphasis on starting fast. I think I'm going to call my shot and say we're going to get a touchdown on the first drive.
Ooh.
Which would be,
I wonder what those odds are on the Sugar House Sportsbook. If you can put a little prop bet on the Eagles scoring a touchdown, you'd probably be at like plus 500 or some shit.
I can't honestly remember the last time we scored a touchdown on the first drive.
That's a long time ago.
That's a stat we'll have to put on Twitter later.
That's a good trivia question for a prize. Who can answer that one, man? When's the last time they actually scored points in their opening drive? Because they've got through it so far.
My feeling is that we'll get off to a lead, and then we'll do what we used to do in 2017, where we'll just have those long drives in the second half that just seem to take up 6-7 minutes. And that's when I think we'll start seeing like Jordan Howard, hopefully, just start having pounding the rock at those 4 yards, then let the clock run down, and before you know it, all of a sudden the game's over. And it was like that. It seemed like we just had the lead, and then Detroit barely had the ball in the second half. But it's going to come down to the biggest thing is turnovers. If we have as many turnovers as last game, it's going to be close, or we're going to lose. And you can't have that many turnovers. And if thankfully, we were able to get a lot back, but I'm not counting on Stafford to throw 3 interceptions like Matt Ryan did.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, so that's pretty much it here. I mean, do you want to break down the slow starts a little bit more? We kind of forgot to talk about that. So they've got 0 points in their first 2 games. They were dead last in first quarter scoring last year. I think it was 41 total points they scored in the entire season in the first quarter. So they're doing it again. They're getting off to these slow starts. What are you making of this?
It is only week. It's only been 2 games, and it's really tough because both games kind of had a weird thing happen in the first drive. Like the first game, we had that Deshaun Jackson. He's getting pushed, and he retaliated, and then that game penalty, and that just completely killed the drive. And then the Redskins, I felt, had like a 10-minute drive, like a 9-10 minute drive, something after that. So that just kind of killed all momentum. And then, last week we had half our offense just like disappeared. And, all these guys who were planning on not even playing at all of a sudden were thrust into the starting lineup, and you could just tell the chemistry wasn't there. So, I mean, now that we have a full week of practice and hopefully there's no, stupid penalty, there's really no excuse this week. So I think this is going to be a good litmus test.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I am in agreement with you. I think they will get off to a better start. And I think the way that they get off to a better start is by actually throwing the ball deep. Because these last two games, they've been really, really conservative in the first couple drives, I believe. And I believe the number was Wentz was only averaging 3 yards per attempt in like the first quarter and a half or something. Like it was something ridiculous like that. So it was conservative, and then they started opening it up in the second half. Well, in this game, I think the way to go is to actually open it up early and then run the ball and do the screens and really turn the clock and kind of maintain the lead. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Maybe you go for a deep bomb to somebody, whether it's Hollins or Whiteside or Aguilar. Just try to stretch the defense a little bit instead of being so conservative.
Yeah, and even if they don't complete it, I mean, at least just put that out there where all of a sudden they're waiting for that you to go back there. You get the defense on their heels a little bit, and that's when you can hit them with the Ertz in the middle of the field to get those underneath routes. So I think it'd be great if they even just have a deep attempt. I mean, obviously don't just throw it in double coverage, but
Yeah.
at least have someone the streak down the field, Mac Hollins, Aguilar, any of those guys, and if the opportunity is there, take a shot.
There it is. All right, that's Mike Skolsky. I'm Adrian Fecchio. You got any final thoughts before we depart here?
It's the first game I'm going to this year, so I'm excited for that. So,
so you're going to the game. You'll have to meet me at Xfinity Live, bro, before the game. I'm going to be doing the pregame show.
I'll be in the tailgate. I'll be in the parking lot at 7 a.m. So
where are you going to be? I'll come say hi.
Yeah. We'll talk. We'll
text. Yeah. We'll text. We'll figure it out. Okay.
But yeah, go Bert.
Let's not give everyone your information. All right. So yeah, I'll come say hi. So yeah, I'll come say hi before. So I'll be down there around 9, 10ish, somewhere around then. Probably around 9ish. So I'll hit you up. We'll figure that out. So yeah, you're gonna be at the game. I'm gonna be at Xfinity Live doing the pregame show with Sean Brace from 11 to 1. Akers, me, Brace. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I feel so humbled by all this, man. Like I'm doing pregame shows with David Akers.
That's awesome, man.
Crazy. And he's an awesome guy. Like we were talking onside kicks last week for like 15 minutes. Well, 2 weeks ago. But we were talking onside kicks for 15 minutes. We talked about the Dallas opener, remember 2000 to start the year against Dallas. And then the other one was there was a game against Pittsburgh when he actually got 2 onside kicks in a row. So the Eagles were penalized on the first one after they recovered it. And then he went and did it again. And I was like, dude, you're the best onside kicker in the history of the game.
Yeah, man. It's something when it's all these years later and you still see some David Akers jerseys around the tailgates and in the games. I mean, he's obviously one of the greatest kickers of all time, and he's just as good of a person from all accounts I've heard of him. So I mean, that's awesome. And I'm really happy for you too with all the radio show and everything else, man. So that's awesome.
Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
Make sure he sneaks you some P90X DVDs too.
There it is. And hey, man, just grinding, and dude, it's been a long time coming. That's all I got to say.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. All right, that's Mike Skolsky. I'm Adrian Fecchio. It's a blue shirt, but don't worry, it's a 76er shirt, not a Lions shirt. It's okay. Okay. Accepted here today. We're out of here. Take care. Bet on the Lion King and the Eagles. Peace. Okay, this doesn't want to end. All right, we're ending. It's done.